Hey guys, welcome to INS's Artistic Pursuits. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful yet functional mobile pouch. It is 7 inches high, 5 inches wide in the bottom, and just a little less than 1.5 inches wide on the sides. This mobile pouch fits 2 mobiles comfortably in them. You can also keep your glasses, pens, cards, cosmetics, anything that you may wish to carry with you in this bag. It is very spacious on the inside. It is also not stretchy as you would expect it to, and you can see that the vertical stitches that we have made, we've used the star stitch pattern. Don't freak out, it is very simple to make and it is easier to follow. Just follow the pattern that I've shown you. When you're going through this tutorial, you'll find that making this pattern is super easy and you will actually enjoy making it, and it turns out to be beautiful. So just grab your things and let's get started. For today's project, I'm using a fine nylon polyester yarn. This is about 1 mm thick. It has 20 wraps per inch. I'm using a 2.5 mm hook, 2 D-rings which are just a little over 1 inch wide. I'm using this magnet button to secure the flap to the bag, a couple of stitch markers, and a pair of scissors. Here with me I have the major chunk of our mobile pouch, that is this long piece of crochet. It actually is the front, the base, and the flap of our bag, which sort of will look like this once it's done. And you can see that the pattern actually runs along the length of the bag, and so we'll actually be working along the length of this piece. Now, to complete this work, I'm actually going to make a swatch with you first, because once you make the chains actually do not determine the length of your bag, because the star stitch that we've made in between tends to shrink the chains, and the length of the bag obviously will. So if you made 10 chains and it was a particular maybe 2 inches long, if you make the star stitch, it tends to go a little shorter than 2 inches. So I'd advise you to make a swatch. That is what I'm going to show you how to make right now. So you make a swatch so you have an idea about how much space it's going to take, and in that swatch I will show you exactly how to make this. So this pattern is actually these star stitches, a pattern of 7 rows that we're going to repeat, pattern of 6 rows that we're going to repeat. And yeah, so after this I will also show you what we are supposed to do in these holes. I'm going to add some blue in between. It's a very simple way of doing it. So first, I would like to tell you how long this is. This whole piece is 19.5 inches long and 4.5 inches wide. I will tell you how many stitches I used to do this bag once I complete the swatch, so you know what it is that we are talking about. So first, grab your yarn and your needle, and let's get started with the pattern. For this pattern, we need our foundation chains to be a multiple of 6 plus 1. For the purpose of this swatch, I'm going to use 6 times 4 plus 1 as the number of foundation chains. That's a total of 25, so that we can gauge how much we need for our mobile pouch. So now I've made a slip knot, and I'm going to make 25 working chains. Now this is my 25 working chains. Now we make one additional chain that doesn't count as a stitch, it's just our turning chain. We are going to work a row of single crochets for row number 1. So we are going to skip the first chain, and into the second chain from the hook we are going to make 1 single crochet into each of the chains that we've made. I like to work into these back loops of the chains. So this is the front, turn your work around and look at these bumps at the back. I like to work into these back loops. Just insert my hook under that loop, pull up a loop and make my single crochet. So that's my first single crochet into that second chain from the hook. I'm going to make one single crochet into each of the chains till I reach the end of this row. So at the end of this row, we should have a total of 25 single crochets. My row 1 is complete with 25 single crochets. Now our next 2 rows actually comprise of the star stitch pattern. So the star stitch, the star that actually you can see here, is made up of 2 different rows. So the first part sits on one row, and then we work our way back with the second half of the star stitch pattern on row number 3. So for row number 2, we'll work the first half of the star stitch pattern. So for that, we chain thrice. So we have 3 chains, and then we turn our work around. Now, into that second chain from the hook, this one right here, just go under any one of these loops, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now into the next chain, you go under any one of the loops. I just like to go to the back loop, yarn over and pull up a loop. So now we have 2 loops on our hook. Make sure your loops are loose and not really tight. So now we have 3 loops on our hook. Now we need a total of 6 loops on our hook. We've got 3. Just hold on to these loops like so and go into that next stitch. So the next stitch right here is this last single crochet of the previous row. So go under both the loops of that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now we have 4. Hold the loops. Now go into the next stitch, the next single crochet, go under both the loops, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now we have 5, where we need 1 more loop. So hold on to those loops, go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So now we have 6 loops on our hook. Now yarn over and pull through all the 6 loops on our hook. Once you come out, tighten your working yarn and make a chain to secure that star stitch. So as you can see, your star stitch is done. Now the first thing we will do is grab a stitch marker, and the 3 chains that we had made, mark that chain right here. So this one right here is that chain, the 3rd chain. So just mark that. That's because we will use that use that space when we're making the next row, and I don't want it to get lost. Usually just you cannot identify that stitch and all that in all these loops. So now that is our first star complete. First half of the first star actually complete. Now for the next part, we are not going to make chains like we did when we were making this turning. Instead, we are going to work into this first star. So now, before we work into the star, I would like to let you know that this hole right here in the center of the star is the eye of the star, and these spokes are the legs of the star. So we are going to work our stitches along this star first, and then along the base of on our first single crochets of the previous row. So the first loop that we are going to make for the next star starts in the eye of the star. So just insert your hook in that eye of the star, yarn over and pull up a loop. Like I said, make sure that the loop is long enough. Just try a couple of times so that you know how your star should not be really taut and it should not be really loose. It's not a puff stitch. Just work your way to find the right length that you need to hold. So now this is the first loop into that eye of the star. Now for the second loop, you see this last leg of the star? We are going to work into the back side of this loop, the loop in the back of this loop, sorry. So now just turn your work to look at the back, and you can see this tiny loop sticking out at the back. The last one, just go under that loop, yarn over and pull up a loop. So now that becomes your third loop. Now for the fourth one, we work into the single crochet that we had worked our previous star stitch into, the last one. So this one right here, just go back into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. So we have one more loop. Now we have 4, so we need 6, we need 2 more. So now the next two come from these two stitches. So go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now you have 6 loops on your hook. What I like to do is I like to hold my work diagonally like so and pull my work down so that I know that these loops are all the same height. Now yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook and make a chain to secure the star stitch. So now this second star, the half of the second star is complete. This section is what we're going to repeat all the way till we reach the end of this row. I'll show you that star stitch pattern again. So now just make sure that your chain is tight. If it's very loose, then the eye hole becomes really big. Now first, for the first that we already have one loop. For the next loop we go into that eye of the star, yarn over and pull up a loop. For the next one we work into the loop behind the leg of that last this last leg of the previous star. So just turn your work behind to see the work at the back. Now you can see that you have this loop that comes out. So just insert your hook under that, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now for the next stitch we work into that last worked single crochet, pull, yarn over, pull up a loop. So you have 4. Now you're going to pull up 2 loops from the fresh 2 single crochets. Just go under that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop and go under the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now we have 6 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 6 loops and secure the star with a chain. Now you can see we've completed 3 stars. It's not very complicated, it's very easy. The more you make, the easier it gets. It's very easy the first time, or the second star, maybe the first and the second star may be a little fidgety, but once you make 3 or 4 stars, not even rows, just a few stars, it gets really easy. We'll work one more star together and then I'll let you guys do the rest of the row on your own. So for this stitch we are going to first go into the eye of that star. Just go into the eye of that star, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now work into that loop at the back of that last leg of that star, just into that loop right there, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now into that last worked single crochet down here, now into the next single crochet and then one more into the next single crochet. Now we have 6 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 6 loops and secure it with a chain. Now that completes our star pattern, the first half of the star pattern. Continue making this all the way till you reach the end of this row, and then I'll meet you guys back and I'll show you what we do next. I am working my last star, first half of the star that is, into the last few stitches, and now that actually the last loop actually comes on that last single crochet of that previous row. So now just yarn over and pull through all the loops and my star is complete. So this is where you should be at. You should have completed your last stitch and this is how your work should look so far. Now to end this row, we are going to make a half double crochet into that stitch where we've just completed this star. So yarn over and go into that single crochet where we had the last single crochet where we had this last stitch end. So yarn over, go into that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all the loops. Now that is your half double crochet and we've completed our first half of this star stitch, which also completes our row number 2. For the next row, row number 3, we chain twice and we turn our work around. Now we are going to work into the eye of the star of the previous row. So now this right here is the eye of the star. We are going to work into that stitch. So you yarn over, go into that eye of the star, pull up a loop and make a half double crochet. We are going to go back into that same space and make another half double crochet. So that's 2 half double crochets in that star, the eye of the star. Now we will go into the next star, the eye of the star, and make our half double crochet. Now if you find it hard to spot, it's actually quite easy to spot it. You can see these loops all bungled together. That is the eye of the star for you, and this small space right on top is actually the chain of that what secures the star, so skip that one. Now we made 1 half double crochet into that second eye of the star, so yarn over, go back into that same space and make the next half double crochet. Yarn over and go into the next star, the eye of the star. If you do want, what you can do is turn around, and when you insert your hook, so if I was going to make that half double crochet, I'd insert my hook, turn around and check if you're in the right space, then you turn back around and complete your stitch. You just need to do that if you're confused. Otherwise, just go ahead and make 2 half double crochets into each of the star eyes that you can see. So you continue doing that till you reach the end of this row. Once you reach the end, once you reach this last stitch right here, don't turn your work around because we will still have 1 more stitch to go. So once you finish the last, once you complete 2 half double crochets in that last star eye, just wait. I will come back and I'll show you what we do next. That is my last half double crochet in that star, the eye of the star. If you count your stitches from this place where we had the first half double crochet till here, you will have 24 half double crochets, but our foundation chain was actually 25. Our stitches are 25, so we are supposed to have 1 more half double crochet in this row. So now this is where this stitch, where we have the stitch marker, comes in. Now we are going to work a half double crochet into that stitch right there. So just pull the stitch marker out and work 1 half double crochet in that chain that we had marked from the previous row. So yarn over, go into that chain, pull up a loop and make your half double crochet. So now this completes row number 3 and your star pattern. This is actually the reverse side of your star. This right here is the front of your star pattern. So now we are going to work the next row. That's row number 4. For that, we are going to chain once, turn our work around, and we are going to work a row of slip stitches on this previous row. So now we are going to just go into this first stitch, the last stitch of the previous row. Just pull up a yarn and make a slip stitch. Now we want to mark the first stitch of this row, right? What I'm going to do is I'm not going to mark the slip stitch because this slip stitch is going to be visible on top, like you can see over here. It's going to be visible on top, so we don't want to work into these slip stitches over here. We are going to work into the stitch behind the slip stitch. So this stitch right here, this is the stitch that we just worked our slip stitch into. So I'm going to mark that half double crochet on that previous row, the last one, with this stitch marker. Now this slip stitch just sits on top of that stitch right there. So now grab your needle and complete making 25 slip stitches. So we make 1 slip stitch on each of the stitches of that previous row. Just go under both the loops of that previous stitch, pull up a loop and pull through the loop on your hook. So that's your slip stitch, and continue making that till you reach the end of this row. Just pull the stitch mark you can pull the stitch marker out and make the slip stitch, or you can just leave it there. We are going to work into that stitch, so if you can work around it, just work around it. So I'll meet you guys back once you've completed the the slip stitches on this row. As you can see, I'm not going to pull the stitch marker out, I'm just going to work around it. But if your stitch marker is too big, just pull the stitch marker out, work your stitch in that space, in that last stitch. Now that completes row number 4, a row completely filled with slip stitches. For row number 5 is actually this mesh pattern that we have made, so that we can add that blue ribbon, navy blue in between. So now for that, we chain twice and we turn our work around. Now you can see that you have these 2 loops right here, and you have a 3rd loop seen, which if you turn around is actually your slip stitch. So now what we are going to do is we are going to skip this slip stitch right here. If it's easy for you, just mark these 2 stitches with a stitch marker and turn your work, and you'll see that the first 2 loops, the V that you can see right in front of you, is that stitch that we are going to work into, not the stitch that we've put the stitch marker in. So now what I'm going to do is, after the 2 chains, we yarn over and we're going to make a double crochet into that first stitch right here. So these are the loops that you can see are the ones of your half double crochets from row number 3. So that's the stitch that we're going to work into. So we yarn over and go into that first 2 loops that you can see and skip that 3rd loop. So this 2 loops right here, just insert your hook into those 2 loops and leave the 3rd one out. And if you turn around and see, you'll see that your hook is behind that slip stitch. That's perfect, because we do not want to work into these slip stitches right here. So now you pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the next 2 loops. Now this completes your double crochet. Grab your stitch marker and mark this double crochet. So this is the first stitch of your row, we're going to mark that. Now you make 2 chains, yarn over, skip the following 2 stitches. So that's this one and this one right here. Now we are going to work into that 3rd stitch. So that's the first stitch, we skip that, that's the first stitch that we actually worked into. This is the stitch after that, and we skip the stitch after that. So we've skipped 2 stitches and into that 3rd stitch. Remember only to work into the first 2 loops closest to you and leave out that slip stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Now yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 loops. That completes your double crochet. Now we're going to continue doing this, create this mesh. So chain twice, yarn over, skip the following 2 stitches, this one, first one, second one, and work into that 3rd stitch. And just make sure, I'm telling you time and again, just make sure that you have not picked up your loop of that slip stitch. If you do, it will kind of tug on this one, and your slip stitch will not look like a border anymore, and it'll look like we worked our way on top. We just need this mesh pattern so that the navy blue string sits on it. We don't want these stitches to be prominently in front. That's the reason we are working into the stitches of the previous row. Now chain twice, yarn over, skip the following 2 stitches and go into that 3rd stitch and complete the double crochet. So we're going to continue doing this mesh pattern till we reach the end of this row. Your last double crochet will actually sit in this stitch where we have the stitch marker. So just complete that. You pull the stitch marker out and complete your double crochet, and I'll meet you guys back once you've completed that. I'm just going to pull the stitch marker out and make that last double crochet in that space. Now this completes row number 5. For row number 6, we are going to make a row of slip stitches. So chain once, turn your work around. Now into that first double crochet that you see, insert your hook and pull up a loop, make your slip stitch. Now into that next chain that we have right here, I like to go under the top 2 loops of that chain instead of just one loop. I like to go under the top 2 loops, so if it'll look exactly like how you would if you were going to go under a single crochet. So like that, I just like to go under both the loops of that chain, pull up a loop and pull through the loop on your hook. Now we have 2 slip stitches. We're going to make one more into that next chain. Just go under both those loops. If your chain is loose enough to fit your hook, it wouldn't be difficult to do this. So I'm just going to do that. Now we've completed 3 slip stitches and the 4th one will be on that double crochet. Now we haven't marked the first stitch of our row. We are not going to mark the slip stitches. Instead, we are going to mark the last double crochet of that previous row. For that, you pull your work, turn your work around to see the back side. And like we did in the previous row, you can actually see that when you look up at your work, you can see these 2 loops and you can see the 3rd one. You skip these 2 stitches, these 2 loops of that slip stitch, and just mark that last double crochet that we made. This one right here. Just grab those 2 loops and turn to look in front. Make sure that you've not grabbed your slip stitch. Put your stitch marker in place and continue to make the row of slip stitches. So I'm just going to continue making 1 slip stitch into each of the stitches that we have. That is one into each of the chains and 1 into that double crochet. So by the end of this row, we will have a total of 25 slip stitches on top of this row. So I'll meet you guys back once you've completed your row of slip stitches. I've reached that space where we have that last stitch, where we have that slip stitch. You can pull the stitch marker out, or you can leave it as it is and just work your last slip stitch there. Now that completes row number 6. For row number 7, we just have this one row remaining, and after that we will keep repeating our rows. So now we chain once and we turn our work around to see the back of our work. Whenever we have a row of slip stitches, we never work into those slip stitches. We always work into the stitches behind the slip stitches. That is the stitches of the row prior to the slip stitch row. So now the slip stitch row was row number 6. We will work into our stitches from row number 5. That is that mesh pattern where we have the double crochet and chains. So now if you want, again, just make sure you have these 2 stitches where we have that double crochet. Just mark that, pull that loop up. These are the 2 loops we are going to work into. We're going to skip that top loop, which will mean that we've skipped that slip stitch. So now for this row, we chained once and we are going to make a row of single crochets. So into that stitches of row number 6, we go under these 2 loops, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. Now you can mark that first single crochet because it will be easy to identify the first stitch of that row. Now we are going to continue making 1 single crochet into each of the stitches of that row number 5. We're going to skip, we're not going to work into these slip stitches, we're going to work into the stitches prior to that one, that row. So that's row number 5. So just go into the first 2 loops, the 2 loops closest to you, and pull up a loop and complete your single crochet. It's not complicated because it's not hard, because you've already done that once when you were doing that mesh row. But in this row, you don't have to skip any stitch. You just make 1 single crochet into each of that stitch right there. I'll meet you guys back once you've completed 25 single crochets for this row. your last single crochet will actually sit where you have this stitch marker. So I'll meet you guys back once you've completed that. I'm on that last single crochet for row number 7. Now that completes row number 7, and this is the back side of your work. So now if you turn around to look at the front of your work, you will see that you have this beautiful stitch, the star stitch, and you have created borders for them, and we are going to work our stitches from row number 2 all the way to row number 7 till the time we want. So now we've actually completed this piece. Now all we have left to do is repeat our stitches all the way from row number 2 onto however many rows to row number 7, that is the one that we just completed, for however many times you would like. Row number 7 is actually row number 1, but I just said row number 7 because we are working those stitches in a different space as compared to the foundation chain. So that's the only reason why I tell you that we're going to repeat row number 2 to row number 7, but that's easy. So now we start now for the next row, for row number 8. Row number 8 is exactly the same as row number 2. That is the first half of the star stitch pattern. I will start you guys off with that stitch. So that is, we chain 3 times. That's 1, 2, 3. We turn our work around. We go into that second chain from the hook, pull up a loop. We go into the next chain, pull up a loop. We go into that next stitch, the single crochet down there under both the loops, and pull up a loop. That's 4 loops on our hook. We need 2 more, so we go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and we go into the following and pull up a loop. So now we have 6 stitch on our loop. We yarn over, pull through all the loops on our hook and secure it with a chain. Now we've started our star stitch pattern. Now we will work the next star stitch into that eye of that previous star, pull up a loop, into that back loop of that last leg of that star, pull up a loop into that stitch where we worked the previous, into that single crochet stitch, pull up a loop into the next stitch and the stitch after that. So now we have 6 loops. Yarn over, pull through all the loops and secure it with a chain. So now this completes, this is actually row number 8, which is exactly the same as row number 2, and that's how we're going to complete this row. So that's the first half of the star stitch, and that's what I'm going to write. So now on your screen you can actually see that I have written first half of star stitch pattern. So that's row number 2 and also row number 8. So row number 9 will be the same as row number 3, and row number 10 will be the same as row number 4, and so on and so forth. For me, now this swatch is actually 3.5 inches long. And if you were going to see how wide you would want your bag to be, just make sure that you check these 7 stitches only. Forget the 8th row. I mean the 7 rows only. That's about 1.25 inches. So you need to decide how wide you want your bag to be and how long you want it to be, and you decide the number of stitches that you need. But just make sure that the bag is going to be the number of stitches that you've decided is a multiple of 6 plus 1. So now let me just zoom out and show you my piece, and I'll tell you how many stitches I've actually made for mine. For the mobile pouch that I'm making, I have taken a total of 139 working foundation chains. So that's how long I needed my work to be to complete it. And if you're using a 4-ply cotton yarn or anything similar to that size, it will work perfectly. It'll pretty much be the same size as that of what I've done. Of course, your work also depends on what hook you use. So I've used a 2.5 hook. That's why I said my 1mm and 2.5 hook should be similar to what you would if you were using a 2 or a 2.5 needle to make a 4-ply cotton yarn, to make this bag with a 4-ply cotton yarn. So just make this swatch and decide how long and how wide you want your bag to be. Yeah, so this is how the pattern for the mobile pouch is made, and it's very easy. Just keep coming back to each of these rows to see how to make them. It's very easy to follow. Just follow that. Once you've gotten a hack of how to make it, you don't really need, and because your row is going to be really long, you're going to already have made it so many times that you will know how to make it, and only if you get confused with where to start, where to end, and what stitches you put where. Just follow that. And I'm also going to write down the rows that correspond to it. So I have made a total of 5. I've made a multiple of 4 times, but there's a slight difference when we end these rows. So I've completed row 1 to 7, and I've repeated row 2 to 7 4 times. So this is the start of my pouch. So once I complete 4 times, that's the first one, second, third, and fourth. When I finish 4 times of that, I would have come to this stitch where we make these single crochets, and I have made an additional star stitch. That is the first half of the star stitch, second half of the star stitch, that is the whole complete star stitch, and I've ended this row with a single crochet so that it mimics this pattern on this side. So this side actually starts with a single crochet and the star stitch. It also ends with a star stitch, the single crochet, and the star stitch. So it kind of balances it out. I will write down exactly how many rows I have till I've completed this. So now in this section, I've completed this row with the row of single crochets. I've completed that, and I've reached this end right here, and I've kept my work as is. So first, make sure you have this whole panel ready with you, and then we will work the next bits together. Here with me, I have the completed mobile piece, that whole rectangle that we were supposed to have. So you would have something similar to this. As you already know, mine is 139 stitches long. So that's along this side, while it is 28 rows wide. So you may have a different piece, but if you do have one which is pretty much the same size as mine, you will have 4 mesh pattern in between. Now, once we've completed this, all we have left to do is actually make a border on all 4 sides of this rectangle piece. But before we do that, I actually want to add some color to this. So in this mesh sections, I'm going to use a string of navy blue color. I'm just going to weave it in this mesh pattern so that it has a bit of color to it. It has contrast, and it doesn't look a solid color. If you do want it to be just as it is, you can simply just skip to the part where I show you how to do the borders. Otherwise, you need to have a string. The string is actually very easy. I have already made the string. It is in this navy blue color. It is a string of single crochets, and the length of the string is actually the same length as the number of stitches on your bag. So for me, it's 139 stitches, and I first made 139 chains, after which I made 1 single crochet into each of the chains till I went to reach the end of the row. So I would have a total of 139 single crochets. Don't worry about the single crochets being the exact same size, because actually the row of single crochets is usually longer than the string of your bag. So when you place them together, you'll see that your your string is going to be much longer, slightly longer than your bag, and that is more than enough to weave the string in that mesh pattern, so you won't fall short of the string. Now, since I would also like to tell you that I worked in the back bumps of my chains when I was making the single crochet, so you can see that both sides actually pretty much look the same. There is no difference. So that's how I like to make mine, but that's very simple. So we actually made a row of single crochets when we started this pattern, so you can refer to that if you want. We just made 139 single crochets and made this string. I fastened off and cut my yarn. I still haven't woven the tails in, but you may also not need to weave the tails in. I'm going to show you what we are going to do now. So now I'm actually going to weave this piece into this bag over here. So now this right here is the front of your bag, where you can see your slip stitches very clearly, while this is the back of your bag. You cannot really see the slip stitches, and the star stitches are also not so clear. So now face the front of your bag towards you, and you need the same, and the number of strings that you need is going to be the same as the number of mesh patterns that you have. I have 4, so I have 4 strings with me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I'm facing the correct side of the string, and I'm going to insert this string from the bottom of this first mesh. It doesn't matter which side you start, it's all the same. So I'm going to insert it from the bottom and pull the string all the way through. Don't worry about it. You can use a stitch marker just to hold that piece in place so that you don't pull it out. And now we will alternate between these mesh patterns. So now once I've come out of that first hole, I'm going to go back in to the second one and come out of the third. I'm just going to alternate it, and I'm going to make sure that my string stays straight and it's not twisted anywhere. So we just keep alternating this mesh, this string around the mesh. Like so. You can do multiple pieces, multiple sections together and just pull the string. So I'm just going to do that, and just make sure that your string is straight. So I'm just going to keep doing that till I reach the end of this row, till I reach the end, and you have this string right at the end over here. Just make sure your string is not really tight, because if you make it really tight, when you actually sew your piece bag on, it'll have these places where it's tugging the work. But you shouldn't have a problem once you weave the whole string in. Just adjust any tight spots that you may have. So I'll meet you guys back after I actually weave in all the tails. I'm so sorry, all the strings in these mesh patterns. So I have 4 strings with me, and I'm just going to weave in all of them, and I'll meet you guys back. I have woven all 4 of the blue strings in our pouch, in our main piece of the thing, and I've attached the ends. I've just pinned them up to the corners so that they just don't come undone. As you may remember, we have not cut our yarn for the bag as yet, but if you did have cut it, it's still okay. Don't worry about it. You can just add new yarn and work your border. So what we are going to do now is we are going to make a border of single crochets all around this bag, so on all 4 sides. And when we come to these sides where we have the ends of the blue strings on both sides, what we will do is we will secure this we will secure these straps, these blue strings along with single crochets on our borders, so that you don't have to sew them on separately. Now I'm just going to turn around and face this side of the bag. So actually I forgot to show the back side. The back side looks this like exactly like the front, just that we don't have the star stitches in between. So now once we've come to this part, this is where my stitch has ended. I've put the stitch marker for that. Now if we worked our way around, we would be working in the back side of our bags. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work one single crochet along this side. So first I'll pull my stitch marker out. Let me just zoom in and show you what I'm going to do. So we just pull the stitch marker out and I'm inserting my hook in that chain space. So technically we would have worked the last row this way. Now we just make a chain. We turn our work around. So this is how we were already facing our work. This is the correct side of our work. Now we are going to go into every stitch that we can see here. The row before this row is also a single crochet row. So you technically should have the same number of stitches that you had made your foundation row. So that for me is 139 stitches. So I'm going to go under both the loops of that stitch, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. I'm going to continue making one single crochet into each of the stitches of that previous row till I reach this corner, the other side. So this was where I had put that stitch marker to for identification of the first and the last stitch. So that's where my last stitch would go. Once I complete that last stitch, meet me back here and I'll show you what we do for the next part. Now I've reached that stitch just before the last stitch of this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the stitch marker out, and instead of working one single crochet in that stitch, we are going to work 2 single crochets in that same last stitch. So I go into that stitch and make one single crochet. I go back into the same stitch and make another single crochet. Now we have 2 single crochets on that stitch. Now we turn our work to look at this side. Now we are going to work one single crochet into the same stitch that we just worked, the last single crochet. You can do that, or you can work 2 single crochets into the first stitch of this side. I like to work it on this stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that side of that single crochet, just pull up a loop and make a single crochet. So now this stitch and the stitch prior to this are 2 additional stitches of our row to make our edges sharp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this last stitch that we just made, and I'm also going to mark the stitch prior to that one. So that's the stitch where we had 2 single crochets in the same stitch, and that's the second of the 2. So I'm just marking the last 2 stitches that we just made. Now leaving this, whatever stitches we make now is exactly the number of stitches that we need on this side of the bag. So for that, what we are going to do is every time we have a row of single crochets, we are going to make one single crochet there. So now this stitch right here, the first stitch of that row, is actually a single crochet. When we have, so now I'll tell you how I like to work my stitches. There is no hard and fast rule that this is exactly how you're supposed to work the stitches, but this is how I like to work my stitches. So this is a row of single crochets. So that's the first row actually. So I like to work one stitch into that stitch right there. So this single crochet row, you can work into any one of the stitches of that side. So I'm going to go into one of those stitches down there and work a single crochet. So you can actually just go into that, complete your single crochet. Now we have the stitches where we have these star pattern. So we had 2 rows of star pattern, but our star stitches are, you would actually just need a total of 3 stitches. That's usually how it works out for me. I only make 3 stitches in that whole 2 rows of star stitches. So the star stitch pattern. So now for that, if you can see, this will be the row where you have this chain. I just go into any one of the loops down there, pull up a loop, make a single crochet. Then I go into a stitch which corresponds to this center, the eye of the star. Any one loop, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. And now in this stitch right here, in that last leg of that star stitch, I like to go into the back loop of that leg of that star stitch. If you can see, just that one there. If it's hard to find, just get another needle and poke a hole through. And now this will be the row where we have another single a row of single crochets and the slip stitches. So that's, I'm just going to go into that slip stitch row here in one of those loops, and I'm going to make a single crochet. So now that completes our first panel. So for the first panel, leaving these single crochets out, in that star stitch section, like I said, I usually just have 3 stitches. So just make sure, if you think your stitches are, the number of stitches that I have made is not proper for you and your stitches don't line up with the rows, don't worry, just go ahead and make additional stitches. It's not a problem at all. It's not going to affect any part of the bag. It's just the front section and the flap. Just make sure that you do not add too many stitches and make your panel wider than it actually is. Make sure, if you want, just make sure that once you made your stitches, align it with some other piece, and then make sure that they don't extend this center section of your bag, because other than the sides, the center section is usually the one that is perfectly wide enough. And also make sure that every time you make the number of single crochets in each of these panels, it's the same. So you have one single crochet, one stitch over this slip stitch where you have the slip stitch row, one single crochet over this slip stitch row, and in between both these slip stitch rows you only have 3 stitches. So just make sure it's always just 3 stitches in between those slip stitch rows and 1 slip stitch on these slip stitch rows. And in this place where we have the double crochet and this strap, you will have 2 single crochets. So that's something that you keep consistent. If you make more stitches in this on your star stitch space, then make sure that however many stitches you make in the first panel, you make sure that you make the same number of stitches in each of the following panels. Now I'm going to show you how to work 2 stitches in that double crochet space. You know you have to work 2 single crochets. It's very easy, but we are going to attach this string along with your double crochet so that you don't have to attach them separately. So now what we're going to do is we are going to insert our hook into one of these stitches. So you have 2 halves of the double crochet, one half is in the bottom and one half is on the top. So I'm just going to go into that bottom half of that double crochet, insert my hook in that loop over there, and you can actually grab the topmost loop of your string over here. That should be either your turning chain or the first loop of that single crochet. Either way, it's fine. Just go into any one of the loops on the top, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. Now we are going to work into the second half of that double crochet. So into that second side, just into any one of the loops of that double crochet, and you go back into that same space, the loop, the topmost loop, actually any top loop of that strap, the string, and pull up a loop and make your second single crochet on that double crochet. So now what this does is it secures your strap to the bag, and it also makes it look really neat. So now you don't need to attach this strap separately, and you've also made that border, so that string over there is secure. So now we're going to work our stitches further ahead. So like I said, this is where we have that slip stitch row, so we make 1 single crochet in that row. So in that turning chain we just make 1 stitch. Now we have this star stitch space where we'll make 3 single crochets. So that's 1 for me, then there's 1 in the center. There's no exact space where you need to go. Just make sure that your stitches are spaced evenly and you find any one loop of that stitch to consistently work your stitches. So I've made 3 stitches on that star stitch space, and I've reached that slip stitch space where I'm going to make 1 single crochet over here, and I've reached that double crochet where we have the string. So I'm just going to pull this stitch marker out and attach this string like we did before to that double crochet where we have that double crochet. So we make 2 single crochets along with the string. Just make sure you attach it. I'm going to weave this tail in before I attach this string to the bag, so I will do that and then she'll come back to you guys. So you continue making these stitches the way we did. Like I said, just make sure that the number of stitches in each of these panels where you have these star stitches are exactly the same on each of these panels. You don't increase or decrease them, and you have 2 stitches on these double crochet rows and 1 stitch along this single crochet and slip stitch rows. So just make sure that your stitches between the 2 double crochets are consistent. That's the easiest thing to do. So if you've not found the correct stitch, it doesn't matter, because it's just a border. It's just there to make an even side for you. No one's going to go and say you've missed a spot or you've gone into the wrong stitch. It doesn't work like that. It just needs to be even and flat. So work your stitches all the way to this end over here, and I'll meet you guys back to show you how we do the corner, and then you can continue doing the rest of it by yourself. So I'll meet you guys back in this stitch right here once you've reached this corner here. I'm just working that last stitch on this side of that bag. So once you've come to this corner stitch, like we did on the other side, we are going to add 1 more stitch on the same stitch. So we just go back into that same stitch and make 1 more single crochet. Now we will turn our work to face the other side of the bag. Before we start making the 139 stitches, that is from this stitch onwards, we will add 1 more stitch to this single crochet that we just made. So I just go back into that same single crochet, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. So this is the single crochet on the side of that single crochet that we just completed. So let me just show you that again. So this was the single crochet that we'd made earlier, the last single crochet. I'm just working 1 single crochet on the side of that single crochet. So just go into that loop on the side, pull up loop and make the single crochet. Now what we'll do is we'll mark this single crochet that we just made and the single crochet prior to that. So these 2 stitches are your corner stitches. So what we essentially are doing with these stitches is we are increasing 1 stitch on the base of the bag and 1 stitch on the side of the bag. That's these 2 stitches. That's the increase of these 2 stitches. You can increase it however you want, but basically you need to have 2 additional stitches on each side of the bag. Yes. So now I'm just going to go ahead and make 1 single crochet into each of these stitches along this row of single crochets all the way till I reach this end, and then we'll make 2 additional stitches like we've done on this corner and this corner, and we'll mark these 2 stitches as well, the 2 additional stitches, that's the corner stitches, and then work your way alongside this stitch and make sure that you have the same number of stitches that you did when you worked this side. So you have 3. If you had 3 stitches for your star stitch, make sure you have 3 stitches on these star stitches and 1 on the single crochet, 1 where you have the slip stitch, and 2 stitches for the double crochet. So your stitches, the number of stitches on this side should be the exact same number of stitches as the other side of our bag. And make sure to attach your strings when you come to these double crochets. Come all the way to the end of this row. That is where we started. This side is where we started our stitches. So come to this end and I'll show you how we end this row, how we end this border actually. I've just made the last stitch for this side, and I'm going to make, like we would do for every corner, I'm going to make 1 more stitch on that corner on the same side. So I just go back into the same stitch and make 1 more single crochet. And remember, when we started, we just started with one single crochet. We did not actually make any additional stitches to make that second stitch over there. So technically we're supposed to have one more single crochet in this stitch over here. So now you can either choose to go back into that stitch, the first stitch, and make a single crochet, or you can just first and then slip stitch into that stitch, or like me, you can choose to make a long loop, cut your yarn, and now pull that extra yarn out. Now you're left with this working yarn, and if you see closely, we actually have a chain over here, and then this is our single crochet. Now we are just going to make a false stitch on top of that chain to make it look like a stitch. The loops that we make over that chain over there will count as a stitch. Now insert your hook into that first single crochet from behind that single crochet, like so, under both those loops, and pull this loop from the front of your work to the back of your work. Now just make sure that you leave enough space to make it look like one whole stitch. Now you bring that yarn back onto this, on top of this stitch. So we go back into that last stitch. So this is the last single crochet. We insert our hook from under that stitch that is right in between that two loops on top, like so, and you pull this loop. So I'll show you where that stitch is. So this was your last single crochet. I just inserted my hook from under that stitch, right in between that stitch, and I came out, grabbing this yarn and pulling this yarn through that loop, through that space to the back of our work. Now you can see that we have created this false stitch over here, and this stitch right here is another stitch, the last single crochet that we made. So these two stitches technically are the ones that we're supposed to mark. So I'm just marking that single crochet stitch for now, because if you mark this stitch, this yarn is still loose, it's going to come out. Now you can see that it doesn't look like you've actually had any slip stitch. It looks identical to your other stitches on the other row. So now what you have to do is put the stitch marker back onto this stitch. Now weave this yarn really well inside. Weave it in a zigzag pattern so that this yarn doesn't come out and it doesn't get loose, because now this is one of your stitches. So now once you weave your tails in, just mark this stitch that we've just created on top of that chain. If you see, it will look like you've actually made a stitch over there. That's because there's that chain underneath that stitch, which makes it look like a stitch. So now just make sure that you mark this stitch as well, the false stitch that we just made on top, and weave your tails in, and I'll show you how the piece looks. So this is how the panel actually looks. I still have to weave this tail in, but this is the back side and this is the front side. You can see that it has neat borders, and don't worry about the crinkles and everything. It will just straighten out. And if you think your sides are a little up and down, don't worry about them. We will make a row of slip stitches on top of this when we complete the bag, so that zigzag edges will just disappear. So as of now, this is how the piece looks. For the side straps, grab your yarn and make sure your D-rings are close by. We'll start with a slip knot, and we'll make 6 working chains. Now after we've made 6 working chains, we'll make 1 additional chain. That doesn't count as a stitch, it's just our turning chain. And now into that second chain from the hook, I'm going to work into these back loops, these tiny bumps that you see at the back of the chain. So when you turn your work around, I'm just going to go into that second chain from the hook, and I'm going to make my single crochet. That's my first, and I'm going to make 1 single crochet into each of the 6 working chains we had made. So by the end of this row, we should have a total of 6 single crochets. reach the end of the row, and I have 6 single crochets. Now before we start the next row, I'm just going to grab this, I'm just going to hide this tail in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert my needle from the top of the stitch over here, like so, and I'm also going to insert it into this loop over here, this corner loop. It's part of this stitch. I'm going to grab this tail and pull it through both those loops to the top of our stitch. Now you can see that the tail is actually coming out from the center of the last stitch to the top of the stitch. So now you can just weave this in when you're making the next row. Now for the next row, we are going to chain once, turn our work around, and we will make 1 single crochet into each of the stitches of the previous row. So by the end of this row, we will have a total of 6 single crochets, exactly like row number 1. Make sure you hide this tail when you're working the stitches. So just go under both the loops and make sure this tail sits on top of your stitches, and work your stitch around the 2 loops and your tail. So now this completes our second row and the 6 single crochets on that row. We are going to continue making 6 single crochets in each of our rows till we complete row number 48. So now once we complete row number 48, in the 49th row, we are just going to grab one of our D-rings and attach it to the side pieces, so that I don't have to sew it on later. But in case you're not going to use the D-rings, or you want to sew it on later, or you're going to have those simple easy attach rings that you're going to attach later, don't worry about it. Go ahead and complete a total of 50 rows. So you'll have 50 rows of single crochets, and we'll do the rest together. But if you're going to attach the D-ring, complete a total of 48 such rows. So we've completed 2, you'll have 46 more to go. Complete 48 rows, and for the 49th row, we'll attach the D-ring, and I'll show you how to do that. Now that completes 48 rows for me. As you can see, it's a long strip of your side panel. Now for the 49th row, where we are going to add the D-ring, I'm going to chain once, and I'm going to turn my work around. We are going to place the D-ring right on top over here in front of our work. That's because this side is going to be the front side of the work. You'll realize that once we complete it. So now for this row, we are going to work through the D-ring and into these stitches over here. If your D-ring is a little smaller than this, if it's just going to fit into the middle 4 stitches, just make sure that you work into the middle 4 stitches. Just make sure it's just even. I'm going to work into all 6 stitches of my D-ring. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my hook in through my D-ring and into that first stitch. If I were going to make a stitch, I would just insert my hook into that first stitch under both these loops. I'm going to do that, pull up a loop through those 2 loops, and pull up that loop through the D-ring as well, and complete my single crochet. So essentially what we are doing is we are securing the D-ring along with our stitch of the previous row. So now into the next stitch, we're going to insert our hook into that stitch. We're going to go actually through the D-ring, so that way, and we're going to go under both those loops of the next stitch. If you can see that, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to go through that D-ring under both the loops, pull up a loop, pull through all the loops, and make our single crochet. So I'm doing that for all the 6 stitches of this row. Once we complete 6 stitches, you'll see that the D-ring is completely secure with your side strap. This is the back side and this is the front side of your work. Now for the next row, we chain once, we turn our work around, and we make 6 simple single crochets, regular single crochets. Just go under both the loops and make your single crochet like you would regularly. So that's, just make sure you have 6 single crochets. Now once you've completed 6 single crochets, that actually completes your strap. What we are going to do now is we are going to make a border of stitches all around. So that will increase the height of the strap by 2 stitches and increase the width of the strap by 2 stitches, which will actually coincide with the space that we have left on our main pouch of the main pouch. So now what we are going to do is we chain once, we turn our work around. Now this is the correct side. This is where your D-ring is, and if you had put your D-ring a row lower, just make sure that your border comes on the correct side, so then your D-ring would have been on the back side. So if you're just doing it the way I am, chain once, and for the 51st row, what we are going to do is we are going to make 2 single crochets in that first stitch. So just go under that 2 loops, pull up a loop, make 1 single crochet. We go back into that same stitch, pull up a loop, and make 1 more single crochet. So now that we have 2 single crochets in that stitch. Now in the next 4 stitches, we are going to make 1 single crochet each. So we go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, make 1 single crochet. Now we go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, make 1 single crochet. We do that 2 more times. So now that is 4 single crochets in 4 stitches of the previous row. So now this will be the 6th stitch of row number 51. Now we have 1 stitch remaining from the previous row. Now into that last stitch down there, we are going to make 2 single crochets like we did in the first stitch. So go under both those loops of the last stitch, pull up a loop, make 1 single crochet. Go back into that same stitch, pull up a loop, and make a single crochet. Now you will have a total of 8 stitches on that row. Now we turn our work around. Now we're going to work single crochets on the side of the strap till we reach the end of the strap. Okay, so now we're not going to make a chain, or we're not going to do anything for the corner. What we are going to do is we are going to work 1 single crochet into each of the stitches till we reach the end. So now the first stitch actually goes into that stitch that we just made. So now in the side loop of that last stitch that we just made, I'm just going to insert my hook into that. Go under any one loop. I usually like to go under the loop which is on top. So this one right here, I'm just going to insert my hook under that loop, pull up a loop, and make a single crochet. So that's the first single crochet. Now into that next stitch, this one right here, I'm going to insert my hook into one of the loops of that side stitch. So just go under any one loop, pull up a loop, and make a single crochet. Now this loop stitch right here is where this D-ring is. If you had only 4 stitches, this stitch will be very easy to work with. If you have a D-ring which is like mine, which is slightly big, what you will be doing is you just go under this loop over here and pull up and make a single crochet. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to go under a particular stitch or a particular loop to make these stitches on the side. You just have to make sure that you have 1 single crochet sitting against each of these single crochets. So if these were your single crochets, they are actually your single crochets horizontal rows. So now when you are working on the side of these rows, you just have to make sure that each of these single crochet rows has 1 single crochet against it. So now that was 3 rows. Now we come to this row, the next row, this row of single crochets. We just go into any one of the loops, whichever you feel convenient, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. I like to be consistent with the loop that I pick. So every time I work into these loops, I go under this diagonal loop, and every time I come against this row, I work into these tiny bumps on top so that the stitches remain consistent and neat. So now I'm just going to continue making 1 single crochet into each of the stitches till I reach the end of this strap. When I reach the end of the strap, I should have a total of 51 single crochets. That's because we've made 1 single crochet in the last stitch that we made, so we had 51 rows of single. We were working on the 51st row over here. So now once we start making single crochets on the side, you will have a total of 51 single crochets when you reach this last stitch. Reach the last stitch, complete 51 single crochets, and I'll show you how we turn the corner. I'm on that last stitch for this side, like I mentioned, the 51st stitch of this side. So I've reached that last row where I've made my single crochet. Now what we are going to do here is we are going to actually add 1 more row on this side. So we would have to actually make 1 more single crochet on the side. So we should have a total of 52 single crochets. Now we have 51, we make 1 more single crochet in that stitch. So we go back into that same space where we made our last single crochet, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. So now your side stitches, you should have a total of 52 single crochets. Now we turn our work to face the bottom of our stitches. We need to make 8 single crochets like we did on this side. So for that, we work the first single crochet into the stitch that we just made. We go into that loop, into this loop over here, any loop actually of that stitch that we just made, the side loop, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. Now our next single crochet is going to be on these foundation chains. These are actually foundation chains. We made the first row of single crochets on top of it. So now we go into that first stitch, pull up a loop and make a single crochet. We'll make 1 single crochet into each of the chains that you can see, into each of those stitches that you can see of the foundation chain. So we just pull up 1 loop and make 1 single crochet. No biggie, very simple. And now that is the last stitch. Now if you see, after the 52 single crochets on this side, this last stitch would actually be the 7th stitch if you count. That is the 7th stitch. We need to have total of 8 stitches on the base like we do on the front, on the top of the bag. So we go back into that last stitch where we just made the last single crochet. Go back into that same space, pull up a loop and make our single crochet. So now we should have a total of 8 stitches on the bottom. Now we turn our work around and we'll make 1 single crochet into each of these stitches till we reach this last stitch. The last stitch will be this stitch where we have made the 51st row, where we started this stitch where we made these 2 single crochets in that same stitch. So that will be your last stitch. From here, I will show you how we start the first one. We will work our first single crochet into this stitch, into the side of the stitch where we just made our last single crochet. So we just go into that loop of that last single crochet, pull up a loop and make your single crochet, and then after that just go into the side loops of every stitch. So just go into any one of these loops, pull up a loop and make your single crochet. So we do that into each of those, against each of the side rows. So we go 1 stitch against every row, and once you reach this end you will have a total of 52 stitches. Just make sure you count them to make sure that you've not missed any of your stitches. You will have 52 stitches when you reach this end. If you want, you can slip stitch and cut your yarn. Otherwise, just come back and I'll show you how I like to slip stitch to have a seamless joint, so that it'll look exactly like this side on this side as well. So just complete your 52 single crochets and I'll meet you guys back to show you how to end that row. Now that stitch completes my 52nd stitch of that side. So now you can see that the strap has actually gone wider, and also it looks very neat, and we'll have neat smooth edges to join to the bag. Now After you make this stitch, you would usually just slip stitch into that stitch and cut your yarn. Instead, I am going to just pull this loop up a little long. That much will do. I'm going to pull my, maybe a little more. That's about 2 inches maybe long. I'm just going to cut my yarn and pull this the loose yarn out. Now you have this tail that is coming out of the center of that last stitch, and we have 8 stitches over here, right? So now grab your needle. Now this is the back of your work. I'm going to insert my needle into that second stitch. So that is the first stitch of that row, the second stitch. I'm just going to insert my hook from behind that second stitch to the front. I'm going to grab this tail and pull it to the back of my work, like so. So I'm just going to actually create the same V sort of effect on top of that stitch, of that first stitch, so that it looks seamless. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this yarn. Now this is the last stitch that we just made, the 52nd of that side. I'm going to insert my needle into this into this loop over here. So I'm coming out of the center of that stitch from back to the front. I'm going to grab this tail and pull it through to the back of that stitch. Now if you see, this becomes your first stitch, and you can see that this V that we have created with the last stitch sits right on top of that first stitch of that row, and you cannot really see the joint, and it looks very seamless. So now these are your side stitches, and these are 8 stitches. You can count them. That's your 8 top stitches, and these are your side stitches. Now all you have to do is weave this tail in. Make sure you weave it in well and hide that well so that this doesn't come undone. So now that completes your side strap. Now make one more identical piece like this one, and we can attach both the pieces to the bag. So I'll make one more identical to this one and come and show you how the piece looks. You can see I have 2 identical pieces with me, and you can see that the way we've increased our stitches in these corners have made it a perfect rectangle, and the number of stitches match perfectly with the number of stitches that we need for our bag. So now I have woven my tails in as well, so you can see that there is no tail sticking out. The D-ring is attached and it is very secure. It's not going to come out. Now that our side straps are ready, all we have left to do is attach this to our main pouch. We have the main piece of our mobile pouch and the 2 side straps with us. You can decide which side is actually the flap and which side is going to be folded like so. I want my slip stitches to run up, as you can see, so I've placed it like so, and you can mark a stitch in between here so that you know this is going to be my flap, and I'm going to work this as the main base of my pouch. So now we have to mark where these straps actually fit in this pouch. Now we know that this side strap is 52 stitches long and 8 stitches wide. So now what we have to do is I'm going to turn my main mobile pouch like so, and when you see these 2 corners, we'd mark these 2 stitches. These are our 2 corner stitches. The top stitch actually corresponds to the top of your bag, and this one right here corresponds to the side. So now this is considered the first stitch. From this stitch on, you are going to count 52 stitches down and mark the 52nd stitch. So now this stitch right here is the 52nd stitch, and I'm going to mark it with my stitch marker. Now we'll mark the bottom 8 stitches. So now from this stitch on, this is your first stitch for the base. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Put a stitch marker on that 8th stitch. And now from the next stitch on, that is going, this stitch marker where we have this white stitch marker, this stitch where we have this white stitch marker is going to be our first stitch, and we have to count 52 stitches again all the way to where we have where the bag actually ends. So that's the first stitch. Now this right here is the 52nd stitch, and I'm going to mark that stitch. Now we are going to fix a strap from in all these points. So now grab one of your pieces. Now this is the correct side of my main mobile pouch, and this is the correct side of my strap because you can see the D ring. Now you pull the stitch marker out and you mark the first stitch on top. Do not mark the top 8 stitches. You mark the corners, the side stitches. So this one right here is my side stitch, and this stitch. Now we have two corner stitches on this side, so you mark the stitch, that the 52nd stitch on this side of your side strap to this first stitch. That's this one right here. Now you mark the bottom 8 stitches, so pull the stitch marker out and mark the next stitch. Now you mark this one to this bottom 8th stitch. You mark the next one. So now we're marking the side 52 stitches, and now grab this stitch right here and mark that first stitch. Now we have our side pinned, and all we have left to do is sew it on. You can do the same thing for the other side. Pin up your work, and I'll meet you guys back in a bit. I have marked the second side like we did the first side. Now, before we go ahead and join this piece, I would like to tell you something. So now, it depends on which direction you've actually chosen to keep your bag. So now I have worked my slip stitches on these rows. If you can see them right here, they are facing that way. So now I would like to join this work and make sure that the slip stitches that we make to join this piece also are in the same direction. So if your slip stitch were facing downwards, that means this V was not like this, it was like this, then you would start from this side of your work and work the other way around. But since my slip stitches are actually moving up like this, I'm going to start working my slip stitches on this side. So I'm going to work from the back to the front. But if your slip stitches were facing down, that is if you preferred having your mobile bag the other way around, then you would start making your slip stitches from this corner right here and work your way around. It's exactly the same thing, but I'm going to show you how to do it from this side because my slip stitches are moving in this direction. So now we will start in this. So now I've turned my work around to face the back of the bag, the correct side of the back of the bag. Now we are going to make our slip stitches here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing clearly. Grab your yarn and hook, and I will see you in this spot. I'll just zoom in and show you how we start our joining of the sides to the bag. I'm zoomed into that side where I said I'm going to start my slip stitches, where I'm going to start joining this side to this bag. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the stitch marker out and make sure you know where your stitches are. Now you insert your hook into both those stitches, so this one and then this one. And I've gone under both the loops of those stitches. As you can see, I've gone under both the loops of the stitches, and your slip stitch should actually be on these sides where we have the star stitch and not on the side where we have this side strap. So now once we've gone under both loops of both the stitches, we pull a loop and make a slip stitch. Now all I did was make a slip stitch in that first stitch. Now we are just going to go into the next stitch. So this is where we made our slip stitch. We go into the next stitch, into both the loops of that main pouch and into both the loops of the next stitch of that side strap. Now we pull up a loop and make a slip stitch. Now we continue making one slip stitch into each of the stitches. So I can go into the next stitch under both the loops of this bag and under both the loops of the strap, pull up a loop and make a slip stitch. I'm going to continue doing that all the way all along this side. So now you can already start seeing that these slip stitches actually align with these slip stitches. So it kind of feels like you've made this border right over here, and these slip stitches kind of just are working in the same direction. So now these stitch markers that we have are just there to guide you so that you don't miss any stitches. If you do not align, if your stitches don't align in this spot, you know you've made a mistake in one of the stitches in between. So just make sure you continue making this exact kind of slip stitch all along, and make sure there is no difference in when you reach these corners, because we have two stitches. We have one stitch for each of these stitch markers on either side. It won't make any difference. You just continue making one slip stitch into each of these stitches to join them, and you go under both the loops. So let me show you that again. You just go under both the loops of the bag, of the next stitch of that bag, and then you go into both the loops of that strap, pull up a loop and make your slip stitch. Just continue doing that without any you don't skip any stitch, you don't go back into the same stitch twice. You can just pinch them together and go under all 4 loops together at one go and make your slip stitch. That's actually the easiest thing to do. So now you can see that it's very, very easy to join the piece. So now just go ahead, join it, and I'll meet you guys back once you've finished joining the whole strap. I've reached the last stitch for this side. I'm just pulling that stitch marker out, and I'm going to make my last slip stitch to attach that side strap to the main pouch. Now I'm done with attaching it. Now you can fasten off and cut your yarn. You can choose to fasten off, or you can just cut your yarn and then weave this tail in. I like to just pull this yarn up really long, slightly long actually, and I'll weave this tail in. So now to secure this, I just go under one of the stitches. To secure this yarn, I'll just go under one of the stitches at the back and I will weave that in. So now you can see that this joint actually forms that border, which is identical to our pattern on the mobile pouch. So now if you see the side, this is how the side looks. Because we don't have any stitch patterns here, these joints actually don't really make any difference. And this is how the back looks, and you can see these slip stitches, which again coincide with these stitches that we've had all along in our mobile pouch. And let me just zoom out and show you. Now if you see, you can already see that the bag, the mobile pouch, has taken shape really well. Just poke around in this corner so that it sets well. That's it, but otherwise you can actually see it hold that shape really well. So now you got to do exactly the same thing on the other side. So if you started from the front and worked your way back, you start from the front over here and work your way back. But in my case, I start from the back and I worked my way into the front. So I will turn my work like so, and I will start from this side and work my way to the front. I will make a slip stitch first and then make one slip stitch into each of the stitches. But when I make the slip stitch, I'm not going to make it from here. So I will start my work. It may kind of seem a little weird when you're working the other side. So you have to make sure that your slip stitches actually fall on top. So if you were doing what I'm doing, I'll just start you guys off for this side. So now I've just zoomed into this side right here, and let me just zoom in and I'll show you how to start, how you have to start working on this side. So this is how I've placed my bag. I'm looking at this side of the work and not the side strap, because whichever side you're looking at and you're working from is where your slip stitches will fall. So now just I'll just zoom in and I'll show you how we work this, how we start the stitches and work the stitches on this side. So now this is where the stitch is. This is the way we are going to work our stitches. So I'm just going to grab my yarn and I'm going to pull the stitch marker out. I'm going to insert my needle where the stitch markers were into both the stitches of this stitch and into both the stitches, under both the loops, sorry, of this stitch and under both the loops of the other stitch as well. Now we are going to pull up a loop. Now if you notice, you will notice that I have inserted my hook from the main piece of the mobile pouch. So wherever you insert your needle in from first is where your slip stitch is going to fall. So that's why I've done that. Now we pull up a loop through both these stitches and all the 4 loops like we did on the other side. Align them and make your slip stitch. Now we will go into the next 2 stitches. So into those 2 loops, under those 2 loops and the other 2 loops, pull up a loop and make the slip stitch. It may kind of seem a little weird if you've never done this before, but this is something that usually happens when you want to work your slip stitches on a particular side. This always happens. So we just make sure that your needle is the needle is inserted from the stitches on the main part of the mobile pouch first and then into the stitch. Once you start your work, it wouldn't really matter because you know what you're doing. You're not going to mess it up because your slip stitches are right on top. So you'll just keep going with the slip stitches like you would normally. So just continue making your slip stitches. Now you can see that the slip stitch is running down like I want it to on this side. So yeah, so that's how you work your slip stitches. Now I'll meet you guys back after we make one slip stitch on each of these stitches, and like on the other side, there's nothing different that happens when you reach these corners. You just make one slip stitch on each of the stitches. These stitch markers are just there to guide you and make sure that you've not missed any stitch in between. So I'll meet you guys back once you've completed attaching the second side as well. Here with me I have the bag which we completed, and I've just woven all the tails in. Now what we have left to do is make a tiny flap in the bottom where we will attach our button and also make a row of slip stitches all around. So for that, what I'm going to do is we are going to mark a few stitches in this space right here. So let me just zoom in and show you where to mark the stitches. Now this is a flap and we are going to mark the center stitches. So no matter how many rows you have or no matter how many stitches you have, just make sure you find the middle stitches. So it's either easy to find the number of rows and just work along that, or if you have maybe 5 of these mesh in between, then find the center mesh and 2 star stitches or something like that to work the number of stitches. So there's no fixed number of stitches that you need. You just need to find a few stitches in the center for this piece, for this work. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to do for this is I'm going to mark the stitches where we have these slip stitches. So this row and this row right here. So these are kind of my center stitches. Now how do I find out which stitch actually corresponds to this stitch over here. So now it's easier if you find your double crochet. These are the double crochets and these are the 2 single crochets relating to this double crochet. So the single crochet prior to that is the one that we mark. Similarly, we do the same on the other side. We find these double crochets, the single crochets that correspond to this double crochet are these 2 stitches right here. So we mark this stitch which corresponds to this row. So now if you want to make sure, you can always count from, if you've got the correct number of stitches in between, you can just count from this corner this first stitch, and you should have the same number of stitches on either side of your markers. So that'll be the center of your work. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn we are going to work stitches right in the center over here. So for that, grab your blue color yarn and your hook. We are going to work into the stitches only in between these stitch markers. We are not going to work into that stitches where we have the stitch markers. It's up to you. I have 9 stitches in between. It's up to you. If you want to extend it, please go ahead and extend it to however many stitches you want. You can actually go all the way up to here. There's no fixed space. I'm just making these stitches, but what you're going to do is going to be exactly the same. Now we will look at the inside part of our flap. So now we're going to work the stitches from this side. So now this is the wrong side of my flap. I'm going to insert my hook into this stitch to the left of the stitch marker, and instead of going under both the loops, I'm just going to go into the front loop, that is the loop closest to me. So this one right here, I'm just going to insert my hook into just that one loop. I'm going to grab my blue yarn and make a slip stitch. This is just to secure the yarn over there. Now we are going to make a half double crochet. So you can choose to make one more chain in that space. Now you yarn over. Now you go into this front loop only of the same stitch that we just made our slip stitch into. Pull up a loop, yarn over, and complete a half double crochet, so that you just pull through all the loops of on your hook. You yarn over again, and now we work a half double crochet into the next stitch in the front loop only. So you go under that front loop, just that first loop, front loop of that next stitch. So yarn over, go only into that loop. As you can see, it's just one loop, and pull up a loop. Now you yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. So complete your half double crochet. We are going to do that till we reach the end of this side. We don't work into this stitch where we have the stitch marker, so we just work till the stitch prior to that. So just go ahead and make one half double crochet into each of the stitches in the front loops only. Just completing that last half double crochet in that stitch where we have prior to the stitch marker. Now once you've done that, you chain twice and turn your work around. Now you're facing the correct side of the flap. Now we make one half double crochet into each of these stitches. So yarn over, we go under both the loops of that previous stitch and pull up a loop and make our half double crochet. So we are going to make one half double crochet into each of the stitches from that prior row. Once you complete the second row of half double crochets, chain twice again and make a third row of half double crochets. So chain twice, turn your work around and make one half double crochet into each of those stitches that we have. So we'll have 3 rows of half double crochets. I'll meet you guys back once I've completed this row. I have completed the third row of half double crochets. Now I'm just going to, you can fasten off and cut your yarn. Now we'll weave this tail in and grab your gray yarn and I'll show you what we do next. I have woven that tail in and I haven't turned my work around. I'm still on the wrong side of the flap. this is the wrong side of the flap, this is the correct side, and still facing the wrong side of the flap. Now what we are going to do is, with the gray yarn, we are going to make a border of single crochets around this blue flap that we've just made. So for that, I'm just going to turn my work to the side and grab my gray yarn and my hook. I have moved the camera in a little closer so you can see better. Now you can see that this stitch is the one that we've made our half double crochets in. Now we are going to work around these stitches only. So you can either go into this stitch where we actually made our half double crochet, or you can go into the side of this half double crochet. So that's a little tight, so I'm just going to use another needle to poke a hole in between, and I'm just going to go into that side loop of that half double crochet, pull up a loop and make a slip knot. That's it. Now we go back into that same stitch, into that same loop actually, and make a single crochet. Now we'll go into that next loop. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make 2 single crochets against every half double crochet row. So when we reach the end of this side, we will have 6 single crochets. So now once I've made this stitch here, the next loop is still part of the first half double crochet. So I'm just going to go into that space. Pull up loop and make my single crochet. That's my second single crochet of this side. Now for the next half double crochet, it's right here. I'm going to go into this loop over here and make 1 single crochet. If you don't find 2 loops, just go back into the same loop and make another single crochet. So now that's 4. 5, and 6. Now I've made 6 single crochets in that space. Now I go back into the same space where we made the last single crochet and make 1 more single crochet. We've been doing this for our corners. We've made 2 single crochets on one side of the corner and 2 single crochets on the other side. So now I'm going to turn my work to face the top of the stitches, and I'm going to go into that top loop, the top 2 loops of that stitch, and I'm going to make 2 single crochets in that stitch. So that's 2. Now I'll make 1 single crochet all the way into each of the stitches till I reach this last stitch. Now in that last stitch, we are going to make 2 single crochets in the same space. Now we'll turn our work around to face the side, where for the first half of that half double crochet, we'll make 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So that one right here, we make 2 single crochets there. Then let me just redo that. That's this loop, 1 and 2. Now for the second half of the half double crochet, we are going to make 1 more single crochet, and we'll make 2 single crochets against each of the 2 half double crochets that we have remaining. So now once we've completed this, what we are going to do is we are going to flip our work around to see the other side of our work. Now you pull your needle, your hook off that loop, and I'm facing this side of the work. Now grab this loop, and we are going to pull that loop to this stitch where we have this stitch marker. So what I've done is I've just pulled that stitch marker out of that loop, that stitch right there. Now you your working yarn, make sure you move it to the back of your pouch. Now we are actually facing the correct side of our flap, the correct side of our pouch. I've moved this working yarn to the back side, and this loop is right here. So now this stitch right here was where we had the stitch marker. I'm going to insert my hook right in the middle and push it through the back loop of that stitch. Now I'm going to pull this loop from the back loop to the front of our work. So I just push that loop there, tighten my loop, and pull it to the front of that stitch. Let me do that again. I think I got the wrong loop. So I just insert my hook into that stitch and pull this loop through. So now once you've done that, now we are going to work a row of slip stitches right on top of these stitches over here. So now you can see this gap between the gray yarn and this blue yarn. You can see these loops. We skipped this loop and we just worked into one of the loops of this stitch. So now we are going to go right in between that stitch, pull up a loop, and make our slip stitch. We do that, we go into the next stitch and make a slip stitch. We continue doing that, so we just go right in between where we had made that stitch and make our slip stitch. So you can see we are actually doing that to frame this stitch, and it will also match the rest of the bag once we complete our slip stitches. So I'm just doing that to make sure it's neat. Now once you reach the last stitch over here, what we are going to do is, now we have this stitch left. Now we're going to pull the stitch marker out, and we will grab one of these side loops of the stitches that we had made here earlier. So if you see, this will be any one of your loops on the side. Just grab that, this stitch which is sticking out, push your hook under that loop, and also insert your hook under this stitch where we had that stitch marker into the back loop only. Pull up a loop and pull through all the loops on your hook. Oops, sorry. So just going to pull through all of those loops. Now that fits well. Now what we are going to do is we are going to make a row of slip stitches all along this place. So now just go into the back loop only of every stitch that you see till you reach this stitch marker, and you just make one slip stitch into that back loop only of each of those stitches. So now I've reached this stitch where just before where we have the stitch marker. Now we pull the stitch marker out and we go into that back loop of that stitch and make a slip stitch. Now if you want your bag to have sharp edges, instead of going into the next stitch and making the slip stitch, make a chain in between. So now after this stitch where we had the stitch marker, I'm making one chain. Now I pull the stitch marker out of this stitch, and into the back loop only I'll make one slip stitch. So what this does is it creates a little sharp edge for the bag. Otherwise you'll have a little more rounded edge. So I like to do this. You can choose to skip that part where you have that chain in between. This is why we had these stitch markers in place. Now what we are going to do is we're going to keep making one slip stitch into each of these stitches all along this side. So now once you reach this stitch over here where you actually have, it's the stitch prior to the one where we've actually worked our stitches, so this one, and this stitch over here is a stitch that we have already worked into. So now we will work after this stitch. If once you slip stitch into this stitch, directly jump into this stitch over here. So if you are not very sure of what stitches you have to work into, count the top 8 stitches of your side flap. So that's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and you work only into these 8 stitches. So once you've reached this stitch right here, you jump to this stitch directly. So from this, after the slip stitch in this stitch, you jump to this stitch, into the back loop only, make your slip stitch and make these 8 slip stitches, and then you come directly to this stitch, the first stitch of your front of your bag, and make 1 slip stitch into each of the stitches in the back loops only. Same goes here. Once you reach this side, just make sure you're only working into the top 8 stitches of your work. So once you come here, just make sure it's not that stitch that we worked into. So this stitch right here is the stitch that we made the joint. So from this stitch, you jump into this stitch and make your slip stitches, and continue making your slip stitches all the way till you reach this space. Now again, you make a chain if you've made a chain on the other side, and don't make a chain if you've not made a chain on the other side. Come all the way to this stitch right here. I'll meet you guys back here to tell you what we do for this stitches around, because we're not done yet. We just have a little more to do. So once you reach this space right here, like, come back and I will show you what we do next. I have almost reached that stitch from where we started. So this stitch right here is where we started that slip stitch. So this was where we made the slip knot and we moved ahead. Now we go back into that stitch because you can actually see that there is no slip stitch on that stitch. So you go back into that stitch, make a slip stitch. So now this completes your circle of slip stitches, and you can actually see that your work looks more defined. Now we are going to work a row of slip stitches around this tiny piece that we just worked. So now I'm turning my work around to the side, and this time, instead of working only into the back loops, we actually work into both the loops of the stitches. So you go in under both the loops of that stitch, pull up a loop and make a slip stitch. Now we are working into these single crochets that we made against this half double crochets. So just go into that next stitch under both the loops, pull up a loop and make your slip stitch. So continue doing that till you reach the corner. You can choose, like in this corner, you can choose to make a chain in between both the corner stitches, or you can choose to just go ahead and make your slip stitches without making your chain in between. I am going to make my chain in between because that's what I did for the other corners as well. So I'm making my chain and I go into the next stitch and continue making my slip stitch. I do this all along the sides of this side and come and reach this end. I'll show you how I like to end my work, so come and meet me at this point. I'm just working that last stitch, last slip stitch in that stitch over here. And after this, you can see that on this side we've actually joined this slip stitch to this one. So what we are going to do is we are just going to slip stitch into this stitch right here. Just go under that back loop of that slip stitch, pull up a loop and complete your slip stitch. And now once you do that, just pull this loop out. You would have had to cut your yarn, but I've come to the end of my spool and I'm just going to pull this yarn out. So now once you do that, use your hook or your tapestry needle. I'm going to use a tinier hook and pull this yarn to the back of that stitch where we just made that slip stitch. So I'm just putting my hook into that same stitch where we had made that slip stitch. I'm going to grab this yarn, loose yarn, and pull it through to the back. And make sure your stitch is visible. Now you can weave your tail in and that will look neat. Now let me just zoom out and show you how our bag looks. So this is how our bag looks right now. As you can see, this little addition makes it look very cohesive and complete. So sometimes small details make a big difference, and I think this tiny detail on this pouch makes a huge difference. You can choose to add an embellishment on top of this blue section, or just leave it as it is. It works. It looks pretty as is. I'm going to add this magnetic button on the inside of this blue section right here, something like this. I'm just going to sew it on, and I'm going to sew this section, this piece on of somewhere here where it actually falls. I will just check where it falls and I'll mark it and sew it on in that spot, like so. I'm also going to add this strap. This is a no-sew adjustable buckle strap. So this whole strap is just made with a crochet hook. So all the joints, the attachments in that to the adjustable hook, adjustable buckle, everything is just made with a crochet hook. There is no sewing involved in this. I've added this tutorial in my channel. You can check it out. I've also added the link in the description box below. Please do check it out if you want to make the same handle. It's a very simple handle. It also is no stretch, and it's also, actually when you see that, it doesn't stretch at all. I'm pulling maybe very slight, and it's only made with single and double crochets. So a strap with single and double crochets worked horizontally to the back strap is usually very stretchy, and this has, compared to the very stretchy, has zero stretch. And so you can check the link out to how to make this strap in the description box below. I'm going to add all of these things, and I'll see you guys back to show you the final look of the mobile pouch. This is the final look of the bag. I've added the handle and a bit of an embellishment like I said I would, and here is the button that I sewed on. I also have a lining on the inside. This is completely optional. The bag is not see-through, so you don't really need it, but if you do want it, you can add a lining like I have. And yeah, I do hope you liked making this bag as much as I did. The pattern is a little different to what I have usually made, and if you did like the video, please leave us a thumbs up. It means the world to us. And if you've not subscribed to our channel yet, please do subscribe to our channel. It helps us reach more people like you. If you do have any comments, please leave them in the comments box below, and I'll see you in our next video. Until then, happy crocheting.